What's up, all you real beast? Magic Pat here. For all you people that know how to fish, this video is not technically for you. It's for all my newcomers that are trying to learn how to catch bait. So if you're wanting to learn how to catch bait, this is the video for you, and we're going to start off with skipjack. Next video, we'll talk about brim, bluegill, and then we'll even go into shad throwing nets. So y'all come along and let's learn a thing or two. All right, we're going to start off real quick by talking about the equipment that you're going to need. So for catching skipjack, you don't have to get super fancy about it. You see here, I'm using a little bass rod. It's the Abu Garcia Black Max, and the Vertos rod, I think it's a medium light. I like using a medium light rod for the skipjack. One, I get a better fight out of them, but also it helps keep the hook in their mouth. They don't have a chance to really jump like they normally do and throw the hook. So bait that I like to use for them, you can actually use curly-tailed jigs, but I find that the most luck that I have is on little spoons. These are actually called Foley spoons, and you can get them online or you can get them at Jack's Bait and Tackle up in Chattanooga. That's where I bought mine from. So it's a very simple setup. We're using light line, probably 10-pound test, I think is what I'm running on this bass setup. A little weight, it's like a 1/8 of an ounce or something around there. I think this one is a 1/4 ounce. You don't have to have a ton of weight to throw them. These are super light. You're really letting the lure action catch the fish. You don't really have to work it too much. This setup right here, I got a little fancy. I met a guy down at the river, Keith. He gave me some of his sabiki rigs, so I'm actually running a sabiki jig that he made and a Foley spoon. But they come in different colors. You can get them in pink, yellow, red. The two colors that work the best for me are the white and the silver. Silver being the best. Sometimes they're not wanting to hit it, so I'll switch over to the white. And they've got multiple sizes in case you're wanting to go for bigger fish. So the one that I catch the most skipjack on is the small little Foley spoon. You see I've got a small in the white and the silver, and then I've got a medium in the white. I did have a medium in the silver, but I lost it down on the rocks. They do get hung up sometimes, especially if you're reeling slower. But it's not too big of a deal. They're super cheap. I think it's like a couple bucks or something, nothing too major. And if you lose a couple of them, it's not really that big of a deal. I mean, you can get these things. I buy mine in like packs of like 25 or 30, I think. So the only other thing is I have a swivel. I'm using a 100-pound swivel. I just like using them. It doesn't really have to be that heavy of a swivel. And then cheap line, this 15-pound Omniflex makes great leader line. My leaders that I make for them are usually only about 12 to 16 inches long. This one's a little bit longer because it's got the sabiki setup on it. But that seems to be the perfect length for catching the skipjack that I find. I don't have to really get too crazy, have like a ton of hooks and things like that. But sometimes you do have to switch it up and use jigs, which I will get those here in a second and show you some of those. Okay, these are the other baits right here that work really well for skipjack. Of course, you know, you can catch white bass and things like that if you need to use for bait in your state that allows it. For catfish or stripes, whatever you want to use it for, these usually will catch the fish that you're after. So, you know, right here, they're super cheap. You can see it's only like 70 cents for a pack of 2 of these things. They're basically, well, they're crappie jigs. Especially these little road runners. These don't work really good because they've got the blade on the bottom. The skipjack loves shiny stuff, super shiny. And then if you don't want to get that fancy, you could just run a jig head. Like, you don't even have to have all the fuzz and everything. Just buy a pack of plain jigs and then just get a pack of these Yum grubs. They're just plastic with a curly tail. I usually run 3 jigs on a line, just because it gives you a better chance of hooking fish. See if I can get one out. They're all sticking together. That's one weird thing about these. They're so daggum slimy, but this is what they look like outside of the pack. Just get a plain jig head, and you can just thread these up the jig, and they work great. Like Skipjack love these too. I find that the spoon, the Foley spoon, works better than these a lot of times, but there are times when the Skipjack are only wanting to hit the little curly tail jigs. You don't have to do any extra weight if you don't want to. If you do 3 jig heads, that's usually heavy enough. You don't have to let it sink too far to get a bite. They usually hit closer to the surface. Sometimes to switch it up, I will do just a plain hook with the grubs on it, and then I will tie the weight on to the bottom down here, and I'll jerk it closer towards like the bottom of the river if they're a little bit deeper. But that's very situational. Like, I don't have to do that very often at all. Usually, skipjack are so vicious that they will come up and hit these baits. So, I mean, that's basically it. You don't have to get super fancy for skipjack. And I'm actually got a little bit of footage right here that y'all can watch. I'll just show you, especially with these right here, the hits are so savage. They put bass fishing to shame. I'm telling you, like, it's fun just catching skipjack just for the fight. You don't even have to keep them for bait if you don't want to. But yeah, we'll go over that footage, and you can take a look at that real quick and just see how I'm actually catching them. All right, as you can see here, I am just working the little current seam. There's faster water meeting slower water, and that's normally where I catch most of my skipjack. They come up into the slower water chasing shad this time of year. Every one that I caught was full of shad. Whenever I was using them for bait, I was finding tons of them in their stomach. And that's why the Foley spoon works really, really well. That's why I do better with it a lot of times than I do the curly-tailed jigs. I usually keep multiple rods on me. One, like you seen laying down there, that has jigs on it, and then I'll have a spoon on the other in case they quit hitting one. I can swap real quick to another. I'm just sitting here working the bass rod. I'm not really reeling too fast. I'm just a slow, steady retrieve. And I'm kind of working the tip of the rod to make the jig move a little more. They were hitting a little bit more aggressive that day. If you weren't making the jig just jump underwater, they weren't hitting it. So I'm just kind of working it like you would a jerk bait if you're bass fishing. So just multiple casts. They weren't very thick this day, so you had to kind of work for them. But, you know, don't get discouraged. Skipjack come through in herds. If you catch one, a lot of times you can catch multiples. Or if you miss one, there'll be several following. You can get several hookups before you get your lure in. There's really not too much more to it. They fight really hard. It felt really great on that setup. But you don't want to play them too much because their mouth is super hard. They're like a rock. And if you let them play too much, they will jump and throw the hook. So, you know, get as much of a fight out of them as you can, but try to get them in quickly. It just makes it easier, especially if you're catching them for bait. You want to try to get as many as you can in as fast as possible. So, yeah, just work the jig, work your Foley spoon a little bit. They quit hitting aggressively. I had to start just reeling it just to get just a steady retrieve, a steady action. They really started picking up on that. As the day went on, I ended up catching probably close to like 15 of them. If they're running really hard, the good thing about skipjack is when they school up heavy, you usually can catch 15 or 20 within like 5 minutes. So they're a very action-packed fish. They fight super hard. And they make great bait. Everything loves them. I've caught catfish on them, striped bass, largemouth bass, gar, you name it. Everything in the river loves skipjack. So it's a great bait to learn how to catch. You don't have to use bass equipment. You can use spinning equipment. That works really well. I usually catch them on that also. I've even seen people just using like crappie rigs to catch them. So, I mean, it doesn't take much. You don't have to get fancy with them. And you can have a great time catching your bait. They put up a killer fight. I mean, the big ones that get really big, 3-4 pounds, will pull drag off of a bass reel like a big bass. So, get out there, get you some bait, have you some fun. I'll see you on the next video when we talk about catching panfish like bluegill.